All right. So again, one last time, hello everyone, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are going to get started in just a moment, but we do want to give some of the folks, most of the folks who've signed up the opportunity to go ahead and get settled into our space today. But thank you so much. All right, well, I think it is time to get started. So hello everyone. I hope everyone's well today. My name is Chris Martinez and I'm the mayor of Gadventures. Yes, you heard me right. There is a mayor of Gadventures. That is my job. And I'm very fortunate to represent the passionate, purpose-driven people that make up our beautiful culture at Gadventures. And occasionally I get to hang out with fine folks like all of you. In just a moment, we're going to go ahead and get started, but we do want to take an opportunity to welcome all of you from all around the world. We had over 350 people sign up today, and so we want to be sure to say a massive hello to all of our friends from Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and the United States. But there's more, because we have people from all around the world today. So also a big welcome to those of you joining from Spain, Singapore, Thailand, South Korea, Brazil, and Nepal. We do sincerely want to thank you all for joining us today. We hope that you and your families are safe and well at this time, and we genuinely appreciate you taking the time to join us today for the Unlearn live event on the future of travel in a post-pandemic world. Before we go ahead and get started, because there's lots to discuss today, I do want to make sure to go through some housekeeping items to ensure that you have the best possible experience today. So first things first, we collected a lot of your questions in advance. So thank you for submitting those questions. And what we're going to try to do is we're going to attempt to answer as many of those as possible throughout the presentation. In addition to that, being throughout the conversation, didn't have a chance to question, we will still be soliciting questions. On the events, as many of those. Ensure that you recommend that you go ahead and select two doors. You'll be refreshed.
Okay, maybe I should take over. Is Chris cutting out for you guys?
Yeah, he is.
Okay. So Chris was going to do.
I thought that was me again.
What's that? No.
I thought that was me again.
No, Tyson, you're clear. So we got interrupted with Chris's introduction there. So I will just take over. Maybe Chris will pop back in a second and he can continue on. But my name is Poon Tip and I'm the founder of Gadventures. We didn't get the introduction yet. And so I'm actually hosting this event today. So I've just actually realized this is the second one I've done. And I realized that after 30 years of doing things like this, I've always been the one being interviewed. And so hosting is actually a completely different experience for me. So today I was gonna, wanted to just keep it like an open chat. We've got amazing guests. Elisa and Tyson are both here. And Chris is gonna come back on and finish the introductions, I'm sure. But we're gonna just have an open chat about, how travel is. We have great travel experts here. But then we actually got all these questions. We got hundreds of questions from people in the audience and who are attending today. And then we realized actually that some of the questions we had, we had like 40, 50 people asking the same questions. So instead of having before we get to a bit more of an open chat, we actually, brought a lot of these questions together. And some of the, it was amazing how many common questions there were. So obviously there's a lot of, specific things that are on people's minds. And I thought we could address those before we get into, just chatting further. So Chris is not going to obviously make it here. So I'm going to introduce our panelist. Tyson, who just made it in by the skin of his teeth here, is one of Australia's most adventurous personalities. Tyson Mayr is a National Geographic Explorer, photographer, TV host, and award-winning content creator. He's traveled the world for over a decade, sharing close to 100 countries to his online community. Tyson has also had his own adventure to Mt Kilimanjaro with Gadventures. Welcome, Tyson. How are you doing?
Thank you very much. I'm good, thank you. I only just made it. My connection's still a little unstable. I have a dog now, a little puppy barking out there. So I'm happy to be settled in. Finally.
Okay, well, we can hear you. And Elisa Elwin, a publisher and editor-in-chief of Out and About with Kids and Travel Play Live. Elisa owns, publishes, and contributes to Australia's 2 most popular travel magazines and digital platforms. She is also the esteemed role of president of the Australian Society of Travel Writers. Welcome, Elisa. How are you?
Thanks. Yeah, I'm doing well. Thank you, Bruce. I'm really excited about being here today and contributing from a female perspective, because that Travel Play Live publication is by women for women. So we have a really interesting, adventurous female demographic that we're talking to there.
And how is that? Is that a magazine or is it an online space?
Everything. Yeah,
Oh,
primarily online at the moment. We've just put up every single one of our magazines for free digital access on Issue, ISSUU. Anybody can go and read them. And we're just bulking up the digital platform at the moment with some amazing content and stories from adventuring women who are all currently at home, writing about their previous adventures and hoping for their next ones.
Excellent. And so my introduction, hopefully I'm the founder of Gadventures. So I'm hoping people know that, and I was supposed to be introduced by our mayor, but we will just continue on. So let's start with just finding out how you guys are doing in lockdown. Or I know Australians are a bit freer, like you guys are opening up quite a bit, but isolation and the isolation for the last three months, how's it going? And did you have plans interrupted before it all started? Where were you? Let's start with you, Elisa.
This is the longest I've been home in 14 years.
Yeah.
Without a plan in the future. So that's been a huge shock. And I was supposed to be on the road for the previous 3 months. That was the hefty travel time of my annual calendar. I was going to be in Fiji, in New Zealand, over in Las Vegas for IPW, International Powwow, and I have family in San Francisco. I was going to be hanging out with them too. And then Australian Tourism had their big Australian Tourism Exchange that was going to be in Melbourne, and that was cancelled as well. So as well as my travels and my business stuff, I have been home constantly. Lockdown isolation alone is a really interesting thing because my kids are grown and left home, and it's had a real opportunity to reprioritize what was essential and to make contact with family and friends.
Well, that's interesting. You used isolation to make contact.
Yeah.
Okay, what about you, Tyson?
I think that's been the biggest finding for myself also, is just the ability to reprioritize all of those things I've been missing out on while traveling for so long.
Yeah.
The longest I've been in place for over a decade now. And at first I was a little bit, uneasy, like most of us travelers. But then all of a sudden I realized this is a perfect opportunity to, spend more time with my girlfriend. I can go and visit my family more often. I can read. I've read 3 or 4 books, which is just something I neglected before that. So it really has been a great reset button. I think it's a very important time. It does provide that ability to, refocus on what is important.
Yeah, I'm in the same situation where I haven't been on the ground for 90 days. Like it's been 90 days that I haven't, I guess going on 100 days that I haven't gone on a flight. So it's been a long, it's been 30 years since I've been home this long. So being grounded is a new experience for me. But so you guys are all watching and following, and you all are anxious to encourage your audiences to travel again, I'm sure. You're following the news. Hopefully some of you are reading some of the scientific data that's going around as well. And as an expert in the field, or expert in, in travel anyways, what's your feeling about people traveling again? Like just in terms of a timeline. I know that, immediately over this winter period for you guys, domestic travel is something that people are really encouraging. But when do you think people are going to start traveling again? What about you, Tyson?
Internationally, I think it's very hard to, everything's, the news is constantly changing, but domestically, I think most people are very excited to get out and explore. I really have seen this rise in empathy towards small businesses and just supporting your own local economy and supporting these local businesses. And even it's not just COVID, even with everything else that's happening, the bushfires and what we're seeing happening in America right now, I think there's been this real rise in people wanting to explore their own country and wanting to support businesses and wanting to learn more about their own Indigenous cultures here in Australia. So I can see a national, it's still unknown for me. I think it's going to be at least another year until we really start to settle back into something that's a little bit more comfortable. We will have these travel bubbles that will pop up and start to open up, which I'm excited for. But yeah, it's still unknown for me. Yeah.
And what about you, Elisa?
I got family all around the world. I've got a daughter stuck in England. My mother's in Italy, and a brother and sister in New York. And my heart, personally, I just want to go and hug them. I'll get them to come back. And so I've been keeping really close track on the international progress. Australia, we've been really fortunate being the most isolated island in the world, and so we've been able to keep a cap on the virus here, and as a result the government's going to be pretty strict on allowing us to be integrated with other countries that aren't as successful. So I agree with Tyson. I think we've got a year ahead of us before we're going to be feeling free and safe enough to do international travel. And we've had conversations with the airline partners too, and it's not so much the planes that are the issue, it's more what happens when you get on the ground in the airports. How are they going to manage to do baggage handling and going through customs lines and keep one plane at a socially equitable distance? And it's heartbreaking for that, but I'm waiting and ready and go for those bubbles. I'll be on the first plane to New Zealand when it opens up, when I can do that. Australian domestic travel. Yeah, we're all doing at the moment, little venturing road trips are the big thing. So it's maybe 2 hours out of your city now that we've been given permission. We've got school holidays starting in Victoria now. And those families that have been in lockdown and homeschooling, they're all just kind of insane and desperate to make some adventures. So they're road tripping. They're going to nature. They're going outdoors. They're going somewhere where their kids can run and be safe, and to give them all a bit of a break. And ski fields are starting to open a little bit too, but there's a lot of social distance restrictions with each of those, and you can't just arrive. You've got to buy a pass to be able to access into where the ski fields are. So I'm looking forward to the intrastate stuff. Interstate is a little difficult. We have a lot of border restrictions that are about to open, and then they close down again as the second wave comes in, and then they open, and as Tyson said,
so you guys actually have restrictions between states.
Absolutely.
Oh, you do.
Everyone.
Okay.
Every state is closed. Yeah.
But the issues. Sorry, Tyson.
Sorry. I think that's what's going to make travel so specialized, especially from an international perspective. How can you open up the borders everywhere, and how can you, when every country is, I guess, getting past it differently? I think travel will become very specialized for perhaps even longer than a year, where you really will need to have your finger on the pulse of what are the restrictions, what are the quarantine times, and because it does change by the minute, it's I think gone are the days where you can just book a flight the night before and head on into that country. There's a lot more research that's involved, which isn't a bad thing. That's half the fun is getting in there and looking into direction. So I think this does provide possibilities to explore new parts of the world which you might not have considered before.
Yeah, conscious travel. That's a good thing.
And do you think that this is all just short term though? Like once a vaccine is found, that there's a the public have a relatively short term memory, or do you think there's a larger impact for a longer period of time? Also, Elisa, sorry, we'll start with you.
Yeah, no, I think this is having a bigger impact. As you said in your book, Unlearn, I had a lot of fun reading that a couple of times. Thank you, Bruce. Enjoyed it. These over tourism, as an example, I don't think that's going to come back. Cruise companies going into little places and just invading for a day. I'm not sure where the cruises are going to come back. People thinking about what they're doing with their travel and how they're going to invest their time and their dollars and their energy, I think we'll be more conscious of what we're choosing and where we're going to give our space. And it won't be the constant travel. It'll be a more thoughtful, one big trip a year maybe, and where are we going to go, and how can we contribute to the community, and how we're going to be safe and really dive deep into the place that we're visiting and be supportive of that local space and the people there. I think it will last.
Okay, and Tyson, I see you moved outdoors. You walked.
I did. Is my connection better now?
Around.
I know. I have a little puppy behind me, so hopefully she doesn't bark too much. Sorry, I didn't mean to move while you were speaking. Then
no, that's good. The signal's better. So what we were on here is like I kind of asked, like, you know, there's a vaccine gonna eventually come. There's 114 teams working on a vaccine right now, and 12 I believe are in phase 3 testing. So it's inevitable there's a vaccine. So on the other side of this, once there's a vaccine, will things return to normal, Tyson?
I think people are going to travel with a vengeance. Never before has there been more built up. People want to get out. We've been traveling for millions of years, from the first explorers actually setting out to find new lands. It's in our DNA. So people are going to always travel. I hope that we do become more conscious, and I think we will. One thing I've seen with this pandemic is never before have we been more conscious of our environment, what we're touching, how close we are to people, the way we behave in public. We're more empathetic to other small businesses and people that are suffering, and we're now learning about communities and how tourism dollars can actually affect conservation and Indigenous welfare. So I think this could be a tipping point of actually moving forward.
And also connected. I think one thing that the pandemic is showing us is how connected we are as a planet. Like the visual, the fact that this virus started in a market in China, and within weeks it reached some of the most rural communities around the world, like isolated communities. How fast, and we've just come through like 3 or 4 years of political divisiveness and separation and building walls and Brexit and populism. And suddenly we need each other to get through this. Like it doesn't matter if one country does better than the other. We all have to work together to get through this. And I think ultimately it's showing how connected we are as a planet. And out of that, you hope that, people on the other side will be more mindful and more purposeful when they decide to travel.
I think they will. I really do think they will. I think that was already on the rise before this. And I think now it's just been brought to the forefront. I'm confident that it will change. I mean, you see it yourself. You must have seen an increase in people being more socially conscious when they travel over the last decade, have you?
Oh yeah. I mean, the last decade for sure, but even the last 5, it's been so the way people want to match their values with their holiday time. Because people used to suspend their values when they went on holidays. We live these more sustainable lives. We're recycling at home. We're eating organic food and 100-mile diets. Yet when we go on vacation, we can suspend all those beliefs. But what you said, Tyson, was there's a tipping point. Like hopefully there's a tipping point. And as an industry, we don't need the entire industry to shift. I personally don't think the cruise industry is doomed. I mean, I think that for the short term, I can't see many people wanting to put their 80-year-old parents on a cruise.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it just takes a few people to change how they travel, and it'll change the whole landscape of the tourism industry. Because right now, I'm hopeful too that happens. But that brings me to another point, which is, just before this pandemic, there was quite a lot of pressure on the tourism industry with Greta and the flight shaming and the carbon emissions. And over-tourism was a buzzword that was being, that was also putting pressure on, what tourism really was. Do you think that, with over-tourism and all those kind of issues of, too many flights, do you think that's still going to be relevant after this, or is it's going to be a thing of the past because we're just actually, sustainability often is something that's kind of seen as a second thought when things get disrupted or changed. Like we saw that in the 2008, recession, that, things with sustainability, which was just emerging back then, kind of got, thrown to the wayside. Do you think these are important issues on the other side of this? I'll start with you, Elisa.
I'm just thinking across the 3 platforms that I'm here representing. With the Australian Society of Travel Writers, sustainability and eco-travel is one of our key pillars. And whenever we meet, we have some basic requirements, if there's no plastic bottles, that we don't wash our sheets, that we pay for carbon offset if we're flying. And we have now a Best Sustainable Travel Award for the best story internationally. We support destinations, product, tourism companies that do that. And it's an essential part of what we're doing moving forward. Travel, Play, Live by Essence is an ecotourism product. And so that is basically 90 to 100% of what we're talking about in all of the adventures that we're creating. And with the family travel, eco-sustainability is a growing sector for families in their consciousness, and they're taking their kids to places to teach them about the planet and to teach them about sustainability. And we're getting a lot of feedback, particularly I'm in my late 50s, 58, and my daughters are accusing me of destroying the planet and not doing enough for them and their offspring. So they're putting a pretty heavy load on us, and they're picking it up, man, and they're becoming the activists and the protesters for the planet now. And I support and love that. So it's not going anywhere. I think it needs to be a prime facet of everything we do in consideration of future travel.
And what about you, Tyson?
I completely agree with what you said, and I think it is so good to see the younger generations, and even every younger generation seems to take on that responsibility a little bit more. And it is comforting, because we are facing so many critical issues right now, and I don't think they're definitely not going to go away overnight. So to get back even to flight shaming, that for me is a tough one, because there's no one size fits all answer to that. You know, travel really, you could look at it from a scientific perspective and look at, you know, the ozone that's produced and all of that. But then travel also is such a transformative experience, not just for yourself, but the communities involved. So, you know, it really is about how we manage that moving forward. Willow.
Tyson, your signal is way better, so we'll take the dog barking in so let's talk about the travel on the other side of this, in terms of what you guys have heard, because you know, travelers want to know what's it going to like on the other side. And you know, you guys are kind of keeping with what's happening, and you know, different standards that are coming on, you know. And how do you think travel is going to look on the other side when we start traveling again? I guess we'll go with you, Elisa.
Okay, I'm guessing it's me. Yeah. Tyson's after the dog. She's found something pretty exciting. You can tell this is not pre-recorded. That's value. Yeah. How far ahead are we talking, Bruce? When other side, when restrictions lift up? Because for us,
I think we'll start with, you know, pre-vaccine. You know, pre-vaccine, okay. Like when travel starts, and you know, and what will travel look like, and then after, and then post-vaccine.
Okay, clean, safe, local, road trips, nature-based, outdoors. And flexible booking and cancellations are a really high priority for everybody who's investing and planning for travel at the moment. So that goes across all of my my demographics. That's what they're talking about. They need to know that where they're going, they're not going to be at risk. They're not going to go, whether it's a hotel that's been hosting quarantine that's now completely cleaned up, or rental of properties, home rentals, Airbnb stays to throw a few rooms in, keeping away, road trips, camper vans, nature, outdoors.
And you don't think people are going to be concerned with the Airbnb concept going into people's homes where they can't control the sanitation or the cleanliness? Do you think that?
It's more the properties. It wouldn't necessarily be that you get a bedroom in somebody else's house. It would be that you're renting the whole apartment or house opportunity, necessarily, where you can come in with your own sanitizers, and you've got to have a statement of cleanliness. Absolutely.
Right. And what do you think, Tyson? What's travel like on the other side of this?
I think similar to what I was saying before, we are going to be much more conscious, one, of how our cleanliness, you know, how we interact with our environment. I don't think it will, long term, I don't think it'll change too much. Short term, yeah, we are definitely going to see people, they're craving large spaces. They don't want to be surrounded by people. I don't think people will be rushing to roam. They're going to be looking for more adventure-based activities out in the wilderness, road trips where they can get out and escape. I think we're going to see a big rise in that. And I know, just from my own personal interest, that's everything I'm researching, and everything that's kind of tickling my interest is just big open spaces. out in the wilderness, surrounded by nature. After being trapped inside for so long, I think we're all craving that.
Yeah.
Right. And what
the
about
other big motivator for travel, Bruce, sorry, I left this one
yes.
out, was reunion with family and friends. If you haven't been able to see people for a while and you need to travel to get there, that's the first point. So that's a biggie.
Yeah. And what about cultural exchange? So, you know, Gadventures, what we do obviously has a big element of cultural exchange. And I believe, you know, there's going to be a lot of standards for like big hotels in terms of certification programs, standardization of, you know, disinfecting vehicles or rooms between uses. And, you know, but now we're with our company, we're dealing with very small scale hotels, very family run businesses, you know, small, and we have to now communicate. We're actually becoming educators, which, you know, being a source of information for some of our smaller suppliers of what we're going to expect on the other side and what this, you know, what we're expecting in terms of cleanliness and sanitation, disinfecting. But that brings us back to cultural exchange, which is and that connecting with other cultures and people on the other side. And do you think that that there's going to be an impact on that, like going into smaller communities, and you know, and will we be able to connect the same way, Elisa?
At the moment here in Australia, our Indigenous First Nation people are being very protected in their remote communities. So they've been the first communities to be locked away from other people coming in, and they're some of the last to open up because of immunity issues and the fact that they've been so isolated. So we have been incredibly supportive of that, but at the same time, in Australia, they're our culture, man. We need to absorb that. We need to appreciate it. And I know a lot of Australians are being more excited about the concept of, if we are here traveling for the next year or so, then that's what we want to do and explore and experience and find those Indigenous experiences, even if it's a walk through your local city to find the rock art paintings and the headlands versus the larger travel into outback and remote regions. It's exciting. Overseas travel, absolutely, when we can. Cross-cultural opportunity is what a lot of us look for, because in Australia we're so isolated from the rest of the world with that. We all speak English, except for the microphone. Yeah, so us as an Australian population, we are a melting pot, but we don't get enough. We need to travel for more of that.
It's funny you say that. I've often said that's why so many Australians venture off overseas to begin with, because we're so isolated. We feel like the rest of the world is out there, not realizing we have everything right here. We have, you know, the largest volcanic chain, and we have sinkholes. We have all of these things that we don't actually realize. And, you know, even speaking of our Indigenous culture, we have the oldest living civilization on the planet. And I think it's something we just need to be so much, we need to embrace that and become more proud and, you know, really share those unique experiences. So I know that's something that's really pulling at my heartstrings. I really want to get out there and experience that myself. Internationally, yeah, I think people are definitely going to return to that, but it is something we need to be mindful of. We need to make sure that the infrastructure is set up, that they can support those numbers coming through safely. Because it's unfortunate, but a lot of these smaller communities are often at higher risk. They don't have the same access to medical supplies as what we would. So yeah, it will return, but it's going to be an adjustment phase. It will take some time.
I also know with some of the hotel properties here that are opening up now for accommodation, they're not opening their F&B, their food and beverage. They're keeping that separate. There's certainly no buffets anymore. So the consideration of that, it just seems to be one step too hard. It's about getting people in and venturing rather than offering the great restaurant or the food experience, the bar.
And so one of the questions that got asked a lot, and this is by most, you know, I'm amazed at how, and this actually is a really shows how interested people are on how the potential for good to come out of this forced shutdown is, you know, many travelers are asking, how can we make better choices post-pandemic? So I found, and you know, and I want to make sure that, you know, so for those who weren't tuned in, we got a bunch of questions, quite a few questions, hundreds of questions prior. And it was amazing to see the similar threads of a lot of the questions. And one of the questions that a lot of people asked is how, as travelers, can we make better choices post-pandemic? So I just find it very interesting. And as someone who's in the industry, I can honestly tell you 5 years ago, that question would have never been asked. Like people would not, that would not be a question that people would ask, how we can make better choices. So it shows that we have a new conscious traveler, like people are just more aware and are more conscious. And I'm just interested to of your advice that you have. I was trying to think of the millennial, just before this, we were chatting before this, for those of you in the audience, we're talking about millennial words that millennials are using that I was going to try and throw in here and sound really young and cool, but the list isn't in front of me now. But anyways, Tyson, how do you think, what's your advice to travelers about how you can make better choices post-pandemic?
I think you need to really research on what your impact is going to be to the countries that you're traveling, good and bad, because you have the power to do both of those. So you really need to harness the good power. Look at ways that you're supporting Indigenous cultures. Look at the ways you're supporting children welfare, like research. You just need to really research on these topics. Choose activities that are supporting animal conservation or wildlife conservation in general. I think it's really going to come down to just putting more effort into the research before you take off and travel.
And Elisa, what's your advice?
My head's heading towards families, and when they're doing this overseas travel preparation, and they either do the long haul, we're going for a year and we're just going to immerse ourselves because it's really expensive to leave Australia and travel. So we're going to make the most of that. But it's all about the world, the passport being your textbooks, the world being your teacher, and families need to be open to the experiences of that. Like getting rid of the kids club option. I'm not against the flop and drop holiday thing, but what we're talking about here is conscious travel. And travel is about exploring and learning and diving deep into another culture and benefiting from that exposure to broaden your mind and your appreciation of other people in the world. And I completely agree with Tyson in doing your research about conservation and not, like Gadventures has done, like never supporting those animal industries that are to the detriment of. Don't ever ride an elephant again. Like, don't be really aware that no matter how tempting those things may be, know what's going on for the creatures behind them and find another way to support the local community that isn't exploitative.
Hundo.
Hey, that's no, Hundo kidding. Don't you do that.
On that note, I am popping back in for just a second, everybody. As I just wrote in the chat, I'm back, just like travel will be once this pandemic's over. One quick thing we want to ask everybody, and pardon me for interrupting, but we want your questions. We want to hear from you. So those of you who are joining us today and watching this, please go ahead. If you have any questions for us at all, drop them in the Q&A section, and we'll do our very best towards the end of this event to make sure we answer all of them. I'll pop out, and well played on the hundo, Bruce.
So for those of you who are watching, hundo means 100%. And I just learned this is a millennial term. So these are great. I told you I'd get it in. So let's inspire. So we've got travelers, and I think there's a few agents on the line, but we want to inspire people to move again and start traveling. So let's get your feedback. Where do you guys, we need to get people back on the road again. Where do you guys want to go next and when? Like, is there a place that you want to go? I'm trying to get my family to go to Italy in August. I know that may be aggressive, but I want to be an early adopter, and I got my kids are all for it. My wife is 60-40 at the moment, but and then I want to go to Japan in September. So any plans for you to travel? We have to be the light. We have to be the guiding lights in the industry to travel early and often to get people traveling.
I think for myself, the next 6 months, I'm going to, well, I say 6 months, probably 3 to 6 months. I'm going to really dedicate it to traveling in Australia. I want to get out there and experience as much as I can. I want to learn more about the indigenous experiences available here in Australia. Post that, depending on the travel bubbles, I'm going to really look for unique off the beaten path experiences. So if we do have something with Japan or New Zealand, not just rushing to Queenstown or Tokyo, but finding those lesser known regions that have all of those exciting and more authentic experiences. Post that, I really want to go to Mongolia. I'd love to just immerse myself, have no real plan, travel to Mongolia and just be there for 3 to 6 months. I finished a trip through the stands this time last year. went to Kazakhstan all the way down to Afghanistan, and we did the Wakhan corridor. I don't know if you've done that, Bruce, the Wakhan trek.
No, I
and
haven't.
then back up to Kazakhstan. It was a full loop around. It was one of the most rewarding trips I've ever done. And I wasn't creating anything. I wasn't, my camera was in my bag the entire time. I'm really craving a trip like that, to just get out, immerse myself in that culture and learn about the world.
Mongolia is amazing. That's a good choice. And make sure you go in June for the Nadam Festival. It's amazing.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah. And so what about you, Elisa?
Okay, so how much time have you got? Because I have a really long list. I don't even know where to start. Okay, next weekend, I'm going down the south coast of New South Wales. And last weekend, I went up the mid-north coast of New South Wales, because we can only do intrastate travel at the moment. And I'm sticking to the coast at the moment only because I love the ocean, and we have whale migration happening right now. And there is one of the largest rebounding population of southern right whales making their way up to the Queensland coast. And you just have to stand on any headland and you can watch those whales breaching and spy hopping and heading past, and it just makes my heart happy. I'm one of those people that goes, oh, there's a whale. It doesn't matter how many times I see one, I get the really high-pitched, annoying shriek of joy whenever I see one go past. Okay, so coastal. If I get a little more time, I'm hoping to go up to Queensland, but we've got these strong border closures right now, and you have to have a really strong, justifiable reason, and I don't think being a travel writer is quite cutting it right now. I'm not part of essential services, but I'm positioning myself to make that claim. When I can, bubble-wise, I want to go South Pacific. Fiji has always been a happy place for me. And we are the largest, Australian families are the largest inbound tourism group to head to Fiji. And the Fijian Islands are just beautiful, with the people from their local villages and the culture that makes me happy and warm and safe. And it's always been a beautiful family holiday for me and my girls. And my mom lives in Rome. And so if you want an introduction to somebody totally cool when you go over there, she's a professional dancer choreographer, got family who are in blues and music. I will introduce you. I'm
going there. That's where I want to go this summer. That will be one of our stops when we go to Italy.
Well, I'm going to introduce you to my mom offline. So she's turning 80 in October. And if I could see her beyond a Zoom meeting, that would make me so happy.
Yeah, I agree that one of the hardest things about lockdown is not being able to, those of us with older parents, not being able to see them as much. But let's get a little bit personal about that. In this whole isolation and lockdown, is there something that you're doing now that you've never done before? Now that you've been forced into this pause in life, have you found anything that you find yourself doing that you've never done previous to lockdown, isolation?
For me, slowing down and not rushing around thinking about what I need to do next or where I need to go. It's been nice to just wake up and not feel guilty about not doing anything, understanding that the entire world is on hold and it's okay to have a breather and let my thoughts wander. That's been a big thing for me, and I've really enjoyed that, and I need to find a way to incorporate that into my future every day. Yeah, that's the main thing for me.
And what about you, Elisa?
I got three things that come to mind first. I became a rabid cleaner. I went through every drawer like Marie Kondo was my god. All my things are folded. I was able to pass things off and see what I really needed. That was a little scary. I haven't done that before. I spent more time on Zoom than I ever have before, and I don't think that's necessarily great, but it was connecting with family, because for the first time, like you, I travel so much for my work that they never knew where I was or how to get hold of me. We're all going through this together all around the globe, and so it was just finding the right time. We've been having incredible family and friend reunions on Zoom, and it's been a real connection pivot. And then I got to say, business-wise, even though the tourism and travel industry has been tanking it, I mean, we're one of the few that have been, one of the many that have been impacted really heavily. I've been busier than ever. I've been keeping in touch with people, finding ways to support them. Like, I've still got publications and platforms that speak to people. So I've been reaching out and saying, how can I help you during this? Because we're just going to keep going and supporting my teams. Thank you, JobKeeper, for allowing us to keep going. That's our that's our support through the government here. So we're
very
here.
fortunate here in Australia, aren't we?
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of countries that just don't have access. And even speaking about some of these communities and other countries that we spoke about, like Peru or Ecuador, there's a lot of people that just don't have access to something like JobKeeper. So, yeah. Sorry to interrupt, but we are very, very fortunate that we can.
I'm here, Tyson. Yeah.
Yeah. So Tyson, just on a personal question to you, as one of Australia's leading content creators. I mean, social media. This is a kind of off topic, but kind of you can bring it back in topic. With you're on Instagram and social media. It's a pretty integral part of your job. Do you think Instagram and kind of that influencer culture is a good thing or a bad thing? And when it comes to the authenticity of travel, I bring this up because I read a scary statistic as a tour operator in the travel industry that said that 52% of millennials would prefer not to go to a destination if they couldn't post it on social media.
That's scary, isn't it?
I know, it's really scary. So what are your thoughts on that?
I feel like I'm on the cusp of the older generation when it comes to that. So I might not give the most accurate answer, but look, I think Instagram can be good. I think it's here now. We need to learn how to manage it. The influencer culture, I don't like at all. I think, a lot of that it's kind of creating this idea of a destination instead of the actual experience itself, which is dangerous because people then go to that destination to replicate that one image, and then other people replicate it and other people replicate it. And it kind of waters down what the experience and destination is. So yeah, I think it can be very dangerous. You just, and I should just say also, it's not just the influencer culture, because it's not just influencers. That trickles down to the average traveler. They want to also post those same shots. And that's where it gets dangerous because, instead of focusing on the experience yourself, you're spending more time editing and making sure you capture that perfect image. And yeah, it's really unhealthy. If I had to give some advice because look, at the end of the day, Instagram isn't going anywhere. There's nearly 1 billion people on it. So it is something that we need to learn to manage. If I had to give some advice, I would say this, and this is probably the biggest one I use: post your trip after you finish. You don't need to be posting every single moment. Share your trip after you finish. Enjoy the experience. You don't need to be thinking about, I need to get this shot up or this shot. Go out and meet people. Go get lost. Really immerse yourself in that culture and share your experience afterwards. That's probably the number one thing that I learned early on, which changed the way I travel.
That is great advice.
Two other things I would say is use social media to inspire your trip, but not dictate your itinerary. It is a great resource. Using hashtags, you can actually go and find different parts of the world which you might not have seen. And even someone that's traveled as much as myself, I still will be scrolling through Instagram and see a part of the world in a country that I thought I knew that I didn't know before that. So I can then use that to go, okay, I'm going to research this country a little bit more and see if there's a trip I want to do loosely around that. And the third one would be, which kind of follows on, just embrace the good points of social media. You can still use it to connect with people. You can still use it to research. Just don't let it override the actual experience itself.
That was excellent advice and answer. And Elisa, I'm going to refer the same question.
Don't ask me to follow that. That's intimidating to have to come up with.
No. Let's take it down to your world though, because you're in publishing. It's also, publishing has been hit very hard. I think the only industry hit harder than tourism over the last 10 years in the digital age is publishing. And what do you think the role of influencers in your industry is being? And because we've seen the stories now of over Instagram destinations and the impact on the content that you create in the publishing world. How do you think influencers are going to impact that in the future?
It's a double-edged sword. The research has been showing that since we've been in lockdown around the world, social media has increased 300% plus, right? So people are capitalizing on that within their internals. TikTok going through the roof is an example of the newer one that's taken off. There's ethical, there's unethical, there's those that claim sponsorship, and then there's those that are paid, and I know that there are some extraordinary storytellers who are influencers and that they say the right things and they get the people going. I'm not so comfortable with the people that head to the destinations or stand in the marches with their long black clothing on to present themselves in a way. Where do we go? We have some extraordinary and amazing storytelling influences in the Australian Society of Travel Writers, and they have to prove themselves to be that before they're admitted. And we have professional people who are, Lauren Barth is an example. She's Australia's first professional Instagrammer, and she's done incredible things and worked with destination boards and Tourism Australia. I don't know if I'm answering your question. Take me back to the core. I'm totally torn with this. I don't like a lot of influencer stuff personally, but I can see the value of the visual storytelling in Instagram is amazing for tourism and travel. The beauty of those pics.
I'm in that world, and I completely agree with what you're saying. I think the term influencer and the influencer culture is toxic. I think there are influential people on the internet that have the ability to tell a story and have the ability to actually share an experience in the right way. But they kind of get muddled into the same category. And that's where I guess I'm trying to draw that distinction, which you also did yourself. And
it'll evolve, right? I mean, when you think about when bloggers first started, right? And when everyone suddenly became a photographer. So suddenly when digital came and people didn't actually have to set up a shot because it actually cost money to develop a film, suddenly everybody became a photographer. And then that, it had a whole kind of evolution on its own. And then bloggers came, and there was a whole series of people who said they were bloggers, or anyone could be a blogger, anyone could set up a blog.
Couldn't write, yeah.
But
who
then,
couldn't write, sorry, coming from the publishing.
But then good bloggers eventually served a purpose. I think we're that way in influencers as well. I think the first wave of influencers are getting attention. They're more attention seekers.
But a lot of ego-driven.
And eventually it'll come back to, where it's what it's supposed to be, where have true influence on. And I believe in truth and travel.
Yeah.
And I think that these things are created because we're in dangerous places at times. I think we were in a dangerous place with travel writing prior to bloggers coming on, where there was a real pay for play kind of mentality with travel writing. You give someone a trip, they write a good review. So everyone got good reviews. And then TripAdvisor came along and people started saying negative things, and it created this whole kind of world unto itself. But anyways, I want to thank both of you from my perspective, because we're going to ask Chris to come back on, Chris the Mayor, and he's going to ask us some questions that people have asked, because people are typing questions furiously into the system as we speak, and I've been listening, and our numbers are really strong today, and people are really interested for what you guys have to say. So Chris, what questions have people been asking?
All kinds of questions. It's been a really great discussion. Before I get to the questions, I do want to acknowledge the fact that we originally promoted this as a 1-hour event. So there is a chance that some of you will have to go in just a moment. But because we had so many amazing questions, we're going to keep some of the Q&A going. So before some of you do head out, I do want to share a little bit of information. So the first thing, and most important, is thank you so much for joining us today. We genuinely appreciate you taking the time to be with us. In addition to that, so while you're not traveling at the moment, we're still committed to bringing you more surprises, such as our virtual travel experiences and more online events. So please stay tuned to see what we're going to be sharing with all of you to get people pumped up and excited. In addition to that, we are excited to have launched, we're excited today to have launched our Travel with Confidence Plus collection of 37 trips in 27 countries, including Australia, that incorporate additional social distancing measures and increased hygiene and sanitation. And finally, in case you missed it, Bruce's Instabook, Unlearn, The Year the Earth Stood Still, is available at www.unlearn.travel. It's available for free at www.unlearn.travel on Amazon, Apple Books, and Kobo in Canada. So just so everyone's aware, you can have access to that book, and we do have some more stuff coming. So thank you to all of you who joined and may have to leave. But for those of you staying, we're going to get into some questions. So my first one's for Tyson. And the question is, how can travelers support local communities? Should we schedule travel now? Anyway, all right, let me take another stab at this. I'm reading off a page. How can people support local communities? Should they be booking now, knowing that there is a chance that things may get postponed?
That's a risky one. And I think that will also depend on your insurance provider. I think we are going to see an evolution in travel insurance with, you know, cancel at any time policies becoming more popular. So yeah, if you do take out the right travel insurance that protects you there, you absolutely can support, you know, you can pre-plan these trips and hopefully help kickstart some of these local communities. What was the first part of your question?
The first part of the question was, how can travelers support local communities? So let's reframe it a bit. How can travelers support local communities perhaps now or in anticipation for returning to travel?
I think the very first thing we can do is support your own local little area, support your own country, get out there and experience those parts of your country that you haven't been to before. Within 2 hours of wherever you live, there are so many gems that you can go and find right now. There are hikes, there's wildlife you can go and see, there's waterfalls, whatever you're into. And the best part is there's all of these, you know, in Australia, speaking about Australia itself, there's so many quirky little country towns that are just so full of character and have these people that just light your day up. So get out and experience that. And in the process, you are supporting these communities which have been hit hard. Everyone's suffering through this. Moving forward, you can then, you know, expand that to a global level. You can do your research on which countries have been affected the worst, and also find out how your tourism dollars are going to be helping those communities beyond just economic stability. You know, is it going to be helping conservation efforts? Using Uganda or Rwanda, for example, the tourism dollars that are spent there have a direct correlation to mountain gorilla conservation, you know, and they're supporting arts and crafts and local coffee and hotels and taxis and all of these businesses that pop up around these gorillas. So you remove that, you remove those tourism dollars, all of a sudden you're putting those animals at risk. So, you know, when you're thinking globally, do your research and find those areas that you can actually go and that your dollar does have a bang to help out.
I love it. Thank you so much. Yeah. Elisa, did you want to add on to that?
Oh, no, I was just, my contribution was part of the earlier part. Oh, my internet connection, am I doing okay?
Yeah, you're doing great.
Unstable. Good. Okay. Was about the travel insurance, because that's a huge hiccup for the world and for us at the moment. And we can't get covered for anything coronavirus quarantine related. So there's lots and lots of companies that are offering book now and change without penalty. So make your plans, do your research, dream a little, and get ready to go as soon as it's safe and it's opened up. Absolutely.
Hear, hear. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Bruce, this next one's for you. And I kind of just touched on it with some of the stuff I said to the folks that may have had to leave. But what steps will Gadventures be following to help travelers feel safe to resume trips next year? And what measures should we as travelers take to ensure our own well-being?
Well, I think the jury's still out. I mean, there's going to be so many groups and organizations are coming up with standardization programs right now. And there's going to be international bodies that are going to have standards they want to fulfill. There's going to be countries going to have their individual standards. And then locally, there's going to be hotels, you know, each tourist attraction, museums will all have ways in which they're going to deal with travelers coming in again, whether it's dealing with social distancing, not having people line up outside, you know, setting up tickets based on timing and when you can get in. So, and then us as tour operators, on the other hand, are going to have our own set of standards and rules that we're going to follow. I mean, the first thing, as Elisa has said a couple times today, is about flexibility. People need to have flexibility when they book, and they need to have a peace of mind that, you know, if anything happens or anything changes, or there's a second or third wave, or or there's a vaccine is found, that they have actually flexibility to change, to move. And I think that that's something that's going to become standard, I think, beyond this pandemic. I think in the short term, though, you know, vehicles having, you know, people not sitting beside each other, making single rooms more readily available and affordable. You know, the standard stuff with gloves available, people using masks when they're in enclosed spaces, hand sanitizer available. And I think planning more, like we've been trying for years, for 30 years actually, at Gadventures' existence, we've been trying to get people away from tourist crowds as much as possible. I mean, everyone wants to see Machu Picchu, but we've always tried to surround Machu Picchu with getting people away. So getting people away from tourist crowds. And so we hope that there's a greater appetite for that. And more people want to actually go and see, like, we pioneer kind of community tourism. And there's places that are so amazing and interesting that aren't on the tourist path, and they can benefit from tourism, and you can have actually even a greater impact on those people's lives by traveling. And that's my hope, that more people want that on the other side.
Bruce, can I ask one question quickly? Do you think,
Sure,
because more people will want that, you will see more communities kind of get involved with that form of tourism?
they'll want to, but I don't think that it's very difficult for small communities like that to get involved because they don't know how to. Generally speaking, the communities that do well are communities that exist already on the tourist path. So if you're going to Machu Picchu and there's communities on the way, that's great. Trying to find communities that are on the outside where you actually have to make an effort to go. I mean, I don't know how many times I've met with the communities that have a beautiful, area to go visit, an amazing community, amazing culture, history, story, waterfalls, whatever it is. I call this the waterfall factor because every community seems to have a magical waterfall. But if you have to get there by private float plane and then take a dugout canoe for 3 hours and you have to hike in for 5 kilometers, then it becomes difficult. So, with this, there's a hope that, more communities will show interest. Government agencies and tourism authorities will actually spend time with more remote communities that need the help, where tourism can be transformational for them. And now there's an appetite for tourists to kind of stay away from crowds, but actually be more interested in local living type experiences, whether it be homestay programs or just a lunch in the afternoon with the local community, or an evening dinner or a cooking class, whatever it is, but it's off the tourist path. So I think, in answer to your question, I think traditionally those communities don't have access to the same benefits, and tourism industry, our tourism authorities locally, they don't have the patience to cultivate a remote community, because it takes a lot of, it's finicky, and for the benefit. But now that there's more of a push for people to want remote communities and be away, you just hope that there's more people that want it, and those tourism authorities will start being able to invest in those communities and be able to help them make that decision to get involved in the tourism industry.
Yeah, awesome. I agree with that.
Our next question's for Elisa, and the question is, with borders and restrictions opening differently in various countries worldwide, how can we book for 2021? And how can we book for 2021 when some countries have no information regarding future travel? Is there any way to protect ourselves?
That's a great question. And that's not a simple answer, because we're talking about complete unknown. We don't know where this virus is going. As Bruce said, a second wave, a third wave, countries that were formerly considered to be safe and recovering are now back in thick of corona pandemic protection. I think what we have to do is stay open and keep dreaming and be ready to make a move as soon as things happen in a really safe way. I love the Gadventures travel with confidence idea, because you know that when you're booking, and I'm not paid for this, guys, just letting you know, this is not a sponsorship thing. But to be able to know that the company that you're working with has all those safety, flexibility options, and that you can make that plan, and if something comes up and it isn't possible to travel at that time, you can then reposition it and postpone it to a safer place. I'm talking from an Australian perspective. We're changing daily. I know the world is changing daily. And I have a trip that I'm supposed to go interstate. I don't even know if I'm going to be able to get there. We're just waiting. It's in 2 weeks' time. Maybe they said they'd open. That's just within our own borders. Stay local. If you're desperate to travel, as Tyson said, all of our local tourism operators, wherever you're living, are struggling and suffering, and they can certainly do with your dollars if you want to go and do a little adventure into somewhere within your safe region, and make the big plan with ethical, flexible, sustainable tourism operators and make those bookings. And then you'd say things pivot. Yeah.
And Australia started that early, actually. Before this pandemic, the bushfires started that whole movement towards domestic, right? So you guys were prepared, and there was a push to get people to think domestic this year. So it's actually quite developed. For in Canada here, where I am, it's a shock to us. The pandemic was a surprise. We're not ready, and you know this happened in March. That's spring for us. So we were right, you know, heading into summer. And suddenly this happened, and we were prepared for that domestic, you know, the idea of domestic travel or traveling locally. But Australia's been preparing for this for some time, because there was a push, you know, all the way into the end of last year and earlier part of this year of thinking about staying domestic, you know, staying locally this year. So there's great opportunities for that there.
Yeah, we had the bushfires come through. The bushfires hit our property in November. So this has been, you know, I had 2 trips planned for March and April. One of them was with Gadventures to Peru. Another one was to Papua New Guinea, a country I've wanted to go to for a long time. Because we had those bushfires hit in November, I think mentally I was already thinking domestically before those trips were even cancelled. My mind was already seeing the damage and seeing, you know, the impact that our local communities were suffering. So yeah, I think Australia did definitely adopt it, and we're seeing all of these amazing organizations pop up that are, you know, there's an organization called Empty Esky that promotes, you know, not just the destination, but all of the little quirky stops you can visit on the way and fill your esky up with honey or local peaches. You know, there's a real push for different types of travel around Australia and supporting your own backyard. It's good.
Elisa, I'm gonna throw another one your way. And this one, I figured I'd throw another one your way. That was a tough one, right? This one is, what do you think the future of small ship expeditions will look like in 2020, 2021, and beyond?
2020? Okay, I have a friend who had a company called Cruise Critic, who was writing all about cruises, and she is currently on furlough, of course, because there isn't much good news about cruises at this exact point in time. But in a real conversation with her last week, small adventure cruises are going to be the first ones to come back. They're a more manageable size you can put in place. It's more commercial in the ability. You don't want a huge cruise ship that only has 50 people on it, but you can do that more with the smaller cruise companies. And they're the ones that will be able to implement all of the safety and cleanliness protocols that are needed, but also have the smaller groups that are then the people ready and waiting to go to those areas. So in Australia, we have a number of them that are remote. You've got, I don't even need to name them, I guess that's not, but they're in beautiful areas like the Kimberley or up on the far north coast, or hell yeah, I'm putting my hand up for one of those. As soon as they're on, I'm on one of those.
There we go.
And they will be the first ones to bounce back.
Wonderful.
And they haven't been as tarnished. Where you've got the issue is the ones that were stuck in the Antarctic and those guys that just couldn't land anywhere. And we do know currently there's around 30,000 crew members still on boats, not able to land and to get back into their home countries. So they've got a ways to go before they're even going to be able to clean those ships or reclaim that territory.
Bruce, what do you think of the future of small ship expeditions in the next year, 2 years, and beyond?
Well, I can speak from experience from us that the polar regions, people are already starting to book with us. So people are still interested in going. And I don't know if they believe that it's so cold there down there that coronavirus can't survive, but we're seeing that there's actually people still interested at this time. Like we're getting bookings for people for next year, of course. And you know, many of us in the industry are trying to save this year's Antarctic season, which will begin in November. So there's still, people are hopeful that we'll still have a season. We're ready to go in terms of ships. It's much easier for us to manage in terms of the sanitary side and the disinfecting side because of the size of our ships. But it's going to be up to airlift. I mean, people have to be able to get there affordably. I'm not sure that there's going to be enough capacity of planes going to the places we need them to go to, which is Buenos Aires or even Ushuaia, to be able to carry enough people for that season. But we're hopeful that, I mean, the airlines have a huge motivation right now to get those planes back up in the air. But they have to be done affordably, and people have to feel safe to travel. I mean, I've said this over and over, like we've had all these conversations today about borders opening and which countries to travel to. But the big challenge we all face in all aspects of travel is getting people safe to fly. Like, because you have to get to the destinations, right? And there's no way around the contained environment of an airplane. So until people feel safe and what we're going to do to make them feel safe, and airlines, that's a challenge for the air industry. They're all trying to figure that out right now.
He's gone.
You know what?
Wow.
This is the ultimate COVID era webinar or town hall. We're going to keep things going. Bruce will pop in a second. While we wait for him, I'm going to flip it to all of you, actually. So we'll have Tyson and Elisa and maybe Bruce when he comes back. But this is a really interesting one. And the question is, and I'll start with Tyson, actually. What advice would you give someone looking to explore a career in the travel industry, and particularly for you on the media side of the travel industry in a post-COVID world? But I want to add something of my own to that. What about during the COVID world as well? So if somebody's interested in getting into travel or travel media during and post-COVID, what advice would you have for them?
That's tough. I think to begin with, I'll give one blanket statement. If you want to get into the travel industry, you need to be doing it for the love of travel. Right now, and this goes back to the whole influencer culture, there's too many people that are trying to become an influencer. They just want a free holiday. They want to post pretty pictures, and you're getting into it for the wrong reason, and it's honestly not sustainable. You know, even using myself as an example, I think I traveled the first 28 countries. I didn't even own a camera. I think I was 50 countries deep before I had an Instagram account, you know, and if this was all to disappear, I'd still be doing the exact same travels. I'd still be doing the same trips. I'd still be going and getting lost somewhere. So first of all, you need to do it for the love. You need to live and breathe travel. That's the most crucial piece of advice. Starting during the pandemic, I don't know if I have advice for that. I think you are going to be very tough. Look, whenever there is an issue like this, it does create a number of opportunities. You know, everything has been reset. So right now, no matter who has a head start in this industry, everyone's kind of at the same point right now. So you do have the ability to perhaps find your own niche market and really penetrate the masses. But it's going to be incredibly challenging. I'd be interested to hear your take on what we do right now, Elisa.
Yeah, well, I'm the president of the Australian Society of Travel Writers, and we have over 330 members, and none of them have any work. So if you're looking for it as a paid opportunity, no, that's not quite true. There's a few little bits coming in, but as a paid opportunity, what travel writers do is travel and then sell their stories. So it isn't a free holiday. It is actually work, and work in an incredible environment, and aren't we lucky? But you don't go in it for the big dollars. You go in it because you love travel. What's happening now is that so many of the publications like my own, we're not getting any income because there's no advertising, and we're the people that are the platforms that pay for the writers to publish the stories. So nobody, that little food chain of, I'm going to be a travel writer, journalist, influencer. You're right, you've got to do it for the love, because there are no dollars in our industry right now. It is double punch hard hit. So maybe do a bit of training. That's a good plan. In Australia, we have free TAFE courses right now and a whole bunch of different industry criteria. Get yourself up, start honing your skills and get ready to go again. But don't expect a lot of money, and don't expect a rebound quickly. It's tough out there, man.
I would just add on to that. Yeah, the same thing is sharpen up your skill set and try to be as dynamic as you can. You know, teach yourself videography, teach yourself photography, learn to edit, learn every skill set you can so that you can apply it where it is needed. And that will help you kind of navigate through these times, because yeah, it is extremely tough, but moving out of it, there will be opportunities, and you just, you know, certain people will be able to find them. So just need to find that niche market.
And I love what you all mentioned earlier about, I mean, turn home into a destination, right? And as you say, train and practice and use home as that canvas. Bruce, welcome back.
Thank you.
We're having a talk about advice for people looking to get into the travel industry. And we were just talking about it from a media and editorial perspective. But what about from an operator perspective? What advice would you have for somebody who's looking to break into the tour operator world in a post-pandemic world?
Well, I think there's, for traditional roles, I think it's very difficult. Like if you're trying to get into traditional roles within the industry or entry level, and thinking the same as the industry just before this pandemic, I think it's very difficult at this time because we've all furloughed a lot of people and we all have people that we want to bring back if we can, and there's a lot of talent out there. But with that said, what I've said to a couple student groups that I've had a chance to chat with, when there's been any downturn in history or any market disruption, you know, there's always been great opportunity, and it creates great opportunity on the other side. We can't see that right now because the pandemic we haven't hit the bottom yet of this pandemic. And until we hit the bottom, it's very hard to look up because we're free falling still. So but we're starting to look forward, and we're starting to see opportunities on how. Because you hear every company saying, you know, everyone's getting the emails from every company they ever ordered anything from saying, we're going to be stronger on the other side. We're going to be better. We got to come together and all this. But what does that really mean? But we all kind of said that, but now we're actually starting to live it because we can actually see as I said, in history, whenever there's been any great downturn or economy disruption, greatness rises from the ashes, and there's huge opportunities. There's opportunities for innovation. There's always opportunity for smart people that can adapt and are willing to change and think differently. And that the younger generation is what our industry actually needs. More young people that can kind of come and inject new ideas and new thoughts into the industry. So like in the minute, if you're just trying to, you know, break into the industry and get a traditional job, it is very difficult at the moment. But don't be discouraged because on the other side of this, there is going to be a great opportunity. Travel will rebound quickly. It'll boom, and there'll be pent-up demand, and it'll open up a whole new opportunities for people that didn't exist prior to this pandemic, I believe. So there is hope, but stay aggressive. Learn to market yourself, create a brand for yourself, like Tyson has done, and go out and show people that you adapt to change quickly, and innovation, great ideas is what's gonna come out of this on the other side of this pandemic.
Bruce, I'm going to actually stay with you for this next question. And the question is, through this difficult time, how's Gadventures supporting Planet Terra Foundation projects? And how can our travelers or anybody watching right now support?
Oh, well, that's, we started a fund just recently. So the Planet Terra Impact Fund, which I actually matched donations to up to $50,000 personally for all of our community projects. So just prior to that, we did a call out to a lot of our travelers, and I think we've already raised over $50,000 from just our travelers and matched that too. So now we have $100,000, and we're still going, and we'll to expand that impact program. And the goal is, if you go to Planet Terra's Instagram page, you can see every day they're giving out grants to the community projects we have all over the world that we're looking at, and that we're hearing their stories. Some of our community development projects are able to support themselves through this pandemic, and some are completely dependent on tourism, and we're looking at how we can help them. We also started the CEO Wellbeing Fund for our CEOs, which are our tour leaders, which we have over 1,000 of them that are out of work. And we can help only so much. So we did a call out to our travelers as well with matching donations for the CEO Wellbeing Fund. So, and then we have a porter fund for our Peru porters, who we just recently gave them a grant to their communities because they're completely out of work. They built our business there. And so we've given 380 families, a stipend to get them through. And then we started this impact fund so we can help them as much as we can. So we have these three funds, and you can go to Planet Terra for the impact fund at planetterra.org, or you can go to our website, gadventures.com, and they'll have information on all of those programs that we're putting together now.
Amazing.
Oh, awesome. I want to end on an uplifting, inspirational note. Maybe we'll see how you answer. But the question is, and it's going to be for everyone. I'll start with Elisa. And the question is, what's your biggest hope for the future of travel?
That everybody takes on board sustainability and giving back to the communities that they are traveling into. that they're, what's my biggest hope? Sustainability, cultural immersion. Make the most of your travel and live the planet and dive deep into the places that you're venturing into. That's my hope, that everybody takes that on board. Yeah.
Amen. Tyson, what about you?
I agree. I want everyone to travel. You know, travel is the most transformative thing that you can experience, and it really does have the ability to change so many communities and help wildlife and conservation. Yeah, I really am hoping, and I think we will see a big push to more responsible travel, to community travel. I really do think we will see that. And just as importantly, we need more people to get out there and go and experience that themselves, because it changes you, man. You do end up a different person when you travel. And I think you end up a better person. You really do. So,
I think all of us that have traveled would certainly agree with that. Yeah, thank you so much. Bruce, what about you? What's your biggest hope for the future of the travel industry? I know you have a lot, but I want your biggest.
I mean, my hope is that people get more connected to destinations. I think just before this pandemic, the tourism industry was in a very dangerous place. And sometimes, you know, when you were young, you did crazy stuff, and you had to just stop and you look back and said, wow, we did some crazy stuff when we were young. And we're in that moment now where the travel industry, we look back because we've been forced into this pause, and we're looking back and saying, no, we were doing some crazy stuff in this industry. You know, this push to commoditize travel, this push for amenities, the way people book based on, you know, thread counts on sheets, or 10 restaurants, Broadway shows, indoor surfing, you know, zip lining. People were pushed amenities, and the destination was no longer relevant. When you look at any travel brochure, the first 10 pages are about what you'll get if you decide to travel. So it would be my hope that when people decide to travel, that in that moment you decide to travel, you have an enormous power and privilege to decide to travel, because you have disposable income to be able to do that, and you live in the developed world where you're able to do that. And that privilege, I hope more and more people take seriously and get connected to where they want to go, as opposed to buying amenities. They actually, like, there's a cruise ship recently that launched having a go-kart track as part of the entertainment on the cruise ship. And there's commercials on this thing, and people are thinking, wow, I can go on vacation and not give up my, you know, aggressive go-kart track hobby. But anyways, the idea that, you know, that people travel more purposefully, more connected to destinations, have a reason to want to go somewhere, will make it better for everybody. And if you're just worried about creating these environments where it's made for you to feel comfortable, like you've never left home, and you need all the comforts of home to leave home, I think that's a very dangerous place for us to be in the travel industry. If you want the comforts of home, just stay home. Do us all a favor. There's lots of domestic, like Tyson just told you, all these great opportunities domestically. Don't go traveling if you can't without having all the comforts of home. You should feel like you're in another country when you're traveling. That's my point. And I hope more and more people get connected to where they're going and the destinations they go to on the other side.
Wonderful.
Yeah. You could even add on to that, you know, seek discomfort a little bit more. Look for those uncomfortable situations. That's where you get the most growth personally, but also, you know, as a society too. Yeah,
you take it a little step further. I always say it about, which is true, because I totally believe that's the only way we can learn is when we push ourselves, right? We say leave comfort. We say, like, you have to leave comfort. And the part that Tyson was talking about earlier about being transformative, our industry misses the greatest opportunity of being a transformative industry, right? The idea that when you come home from an amazing travel experience, you should have a greater understanding of where you come from, a greater appreciation for your community, and a greater appreciation for where you sit in the universe, you know, and that can only benefit the planet if more and more people travel and get that experience, as opposed to trying to create these simulated Western environments so people feel like they never left home and can eat 10 different foods every day and stay stimulated and entertained at every second. So, Chrissy, that was a hot question. You wanted to end on a positive note. That was a big question.
I'd say you nailed it, all three of you. I'm incredibly inspired. I'm going to go outside, go check out my neighborhood, get into it, and then when I can travel, we'll do that as well. I'm going to pass it over back to Bruce in just a moment, but before I do want to say one more time a massive thank you to everyone who's joining us today for taking the time out of your day to be here with us for this very important conversation. And again, while we're not traveling, please stay tuned. We're working hard to surprise you all, creating stuff like our virtual travel experiences to keep you engaged and feeling like you're in destination. So please stay tuned. In addition to that, as mentioned earlier, we're super excited here at Gadventures to have today launched our Travel with Confidence Plus collection, featuring 37 trips in 27 countries, including Australia and New Zealand, that incorporate additional social distancing measures and increased hygiene and sanitation. Before I pass it over to Bruce, I do want to say on a personal note, thank you so much, Elisa. Thank you, Tyson. Thank you, Bruce. And one last time, thank you to everyone here. I'll pass it over to Bruce. Please stay well, everybody. We'll see you on the road soon enough. Thank you.
Okay, I don't know what I'm supposed to say at this part, but thank you, everybody. You know, one thing we never take for granted here at Gadventures is time and people's time. So thank you for joining us today. Especially thanks for Elisa. And I thought it was going to be you and me. And then Tyson figured out if he went outside, he got a signal. So thank you both for taking the time and joining us. It was a pleasure getting to know you and hanging out for you for a while. To our travelers that are out there that are attending, I also thank you for your time. As Chris mentioned, in isolation, I wrote an Insta book, which is only 12,000 words. It's a very easy read and it's a free download, and it's been amazing how well that's gone. But it's specifically in Australia, and you can, it's available at Apple Books, Amazon, but you can go to unlearn.travel and you can find out more information about that. And in closing, I just want to thank Australia, Australia and New Zealand, actually, both. Countries that were our first countries that we sold outside of Canada like 30 years ago. I think it was 28 years ago that we first launched. And the market and the people have always been incredibly supportive of us and always embraced, even when we were doing this back in the mid 90s, it was kind of thankless because people didn't really connect transformative and sustainable and responsible with travel yet. And so we were kind of, I guess, considered ahead of our time. But Australia very early adopted us as a local son, and has always been very, very supportive of us. And I just want to thank all of you who have supported us over the years. You guys have done an amazing job of handling this coronavirus. I was there on March the 9th. I did 2 keynotes in Australia, one in Sydney and one in New Zealand. And you had 5 cases in Australia at the time and 1 case in New Zealand. And I think I did 14 interviews in 2 days there, 1 television, 3 radio, and the rest print. I was amazed at why is everyone talking about this virus every time? And everyone's talking about these fights on the street for toilet paper. This was the biggest topic of conversation in Australia. And I said, what the heck is this about? And I got up on stage and tell everyone we had to keep traveling. We have to keep traveling, not knowing that within a week, the whole entire world would, descend into a Will Smith movie. And here we are. Just, living this, a planet that's absolutely shut down. So all of you guys stay safe. You guys have done an amazing job, and you're going to create your bubble with some of the maybe Pacific Islands and New Zealand. So keep traveling, but of course, we want to see you somewhere in the world real soon. So stay in touch. We're going to supply as much information as we can along the way on how we can get you to feel safe and travel again. And we're going to offer everything and work hard to get you back on the road again. So thank you, everybody, again. Thanks, Tyson, again. Thanks, Lisa, again.
Thanks for having us, guys. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much. It's been a pleasure. Yeah.